Hey folks, welcome back to Three's In. This afternoon I'm going to tell a story about the time when Mikey, a good friend of mine, got the HH-3 rescue squadron over in Korea. Now Mikey and I had been friends since '77. We both worked in the safety shop at Vance, and we became good friends there. And then over the years we became very close friends and remain so to this day. This is one of those stories we will laugh about on occasion. So Mike was in Tweets when I first met him, T-37s, and then he came down to Randolph. He followed me down to Randolph in safety shop at command, and then I went to Australia, and Mikey went to back to helicopters, and eventually he ended up in Korea. So he gets over to Korea, and the plan was for him to be the operations officer for about 18 months. And then after 18 months, if the powers that be liked what they saw, he was going to assume the squadron commander job. That's kind of the way the system worked at the time. So Mikey goes over there, and he does well, as he typically did with any assignment he was given. And he was nominated or named to be the next squadron commander. Well, the wing commander was billeted in Hawaii. It was a guy named Eric the Week. That wasn't his real name, but suffice for this video, it works. I had met Eric in a rescue squadron at Korat in 1974. Small world. Anyway, Eric the Week comes over to Korea for the change of command. Now Mikey and his guys are all dressed in flight suits, as Mikey had requested. It was more or less a combat organization, and he saw that as the uniform of the day. Well, that's the first thing that chafed Eric's butt, but there were many more to come. So anyway, as the festivities were starting to come together, Eric calls Mike aside, and he says, I got a couple things to tell you that he says you best keep them in mind if you want to do well. He says, first of all, he says, you weren't my first choice to be the commander of this outfit. He says, you weren't my second, third, or he says, I don't even know if you were on the radar, but he says, I was overruled. So he said, you need to keep three things in mind to be successful. He says, the success of this unit is going to be based on image, performance, and perception. He says it's going to be based on how well people see you and your troops, how well they perceive you can do the job you're assigned, complete the missions you're assigned, and then 10% is going to be your actual performance grade. So it kind of sorted itself out, 40% image and 50% perception, and then 10% actual performance. And Mike was just chafed when he heard that from this knothead. And he later told me, he says, Bob, if I hadn't worked so hard to become the commander, he says, I would have told him what he could do with that squadron commander job. He said, but then they'd have brought in some nitwit, and he said it wasn't fair to those guys. And like me, he wanted to be a squadron commander of a flying squadron, so he just kind of sucked it up and went along. Well, about a few months later, they have this huge exercise in Korea, as they tend to, and it involved about 70,000 players. The Korean Air Force, the Korean Army, the American Air Force, and the American Army, and Marines, and a few other people. Huge exercise. They have them every year, every couple of years. They've done it ever since we left troops in Korea. So you got all these players. Now, Mike Squadron is responsible for flying at night, low level, into North Korea and picking up our guys who've been shot down. They fly very close to the edge of the earth, maybe 50 feet or whatever, at night, wearing night vision goggles, and go around and pick up our guys that have been shot down. That's what the mission was. So anyway, the exercise date lights off, and a weather front comes in and shuts everything down. Nobody is moving. Weather's about 0-0. I mean, it's just pea soup out there. They can't even see, hardly can see their hand in front of their face. And that weather comes in, the front stalls, and just sits there for the whole 2 weeks of the exercise. Well, when the exercise was over, it was up to Mike to send an after actions report to the headquarters over in Hawaii. So Mike sits down, he starts writing this report and gives them the usual blather to start it, and then he gets down to the meat of the report. He says, probably the commander's assessment. He says, in that, the inspectors perceived that we could do the job once we launched and come back safely, and we continually presented a favorable image throughout the 2 weeks. He says, I assess the mission 90% successful with no sorties launched. Well, that report went up to headquarters, and Mike said that was the first time he got woke up in the middle of the night from Eric. Eric was on fire. So, what are you, some kind of smart ass? And he said, no, sir. He said, you're the one that gave me those marching orders. He said, you yourself told me that my grade was going to be based on 40% image, 50% perception, and 10% actual performance. He said, we killed it on the image and perception area. He says, unfortunately, he said, we just didn't have the weather to launch. And it's like, Mike, when you get into a hole that's you're getting deep, stop shoveling. But we've laughed about that for years. The second red rocket call Mikey got from Eric the Weak was about a incident that occurred in the officers club. Apparently these Marine guys had come into the O Club one night and wanted to play a game of crud. Now you'll have to look that up on your own time. I've never Googled it, but I imagine it's in there with everything else. So Mike and his squadron were playing these Marines in a crud match. And they said, the Marines said it's going to be full contact. And Mike says, well, no, we're not going to do full contact. We can't do it. We've got an alert commitment. I got to keep my guys healthy. And the Marines started calling them all kinds of names, insulting them and so forth. So they finally struck a nerve with Mike, which didn't take much. But anyway, they struck this nerve, and Mike says, all right, full contact crud. So the Marine commander kind of got down on the pool table. The game is played over a pool table with some balls and so forth. So he got down and he was lining up his shot when Mike hit him over the back with a folding chair and knocked him out. Well, the other Marines all started to come at Mike, and Mike pointed his finger and said, all right, he says, he's the one that said full contact crud. He says, and that's the way it's going to be. Well, when it was all said and done, they owed the officers club a couple nickels for the damages they had done. And of course, that report went back to Hawaii, and that's when Mike got the second call. But they paid it all up and everything was fine, and Mike completed his squadron commander billet and ended up having a great career. He ended up in JSOC in Sneaky Pete organization. Just a couple fun little stories for this afternoon. Nice to see everyone, and we'll talk to you again soon.